The aim of all the sessions this afternoon is very much to look at what progress have we made. We're sitting at the halfway mark in this grand project that is being addressed by many countries across the world. We're halfway there. What progress have we made? And what are we doing to accelerate this for the next 7 years? These are big challenges, as we've learned this morning. We're going to come to our first speaker, who is Mr. Callist, Commissioner from the Ministry of Water and Environment. We heard this morning very much about the need to bring more people into the cash economy. And it was very clear that in order for more people to get access to better water resources, a greater percentage of the population needs to enter the cash economy and to provide input into public services, either through taxation or to actually buy those services directly through the private sector. Now, in light of these factors, sir, maybe you could share a bit about progress on SDG 6 so far and how you think that can be accelerated over the coming years. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Moderator. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, honorary ministers, members of Parliament, protocol observed. I do represent the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Water and Environment, Mr. Alfred Okidi, who sends his apologies. As a Minister of Water and Environment, we are the custodian of SDG 6 on clean water and sanitation. And for those of us who actually have taken food today, are drinking water in front of us, we do recognize that water is life. Without water, we cannot survive. So under SDG 6, we are trying to provide clean water and sanitation, but we are looking at water in the broad sense, that we need water for drinking, we need water for health, we need water for education, for hydropower, for industry, for all the uses that we depend on. But also we want to manage this water so that it doesn't become a problem, but it becomes an opportunity. Too much water will come as floods. It will kill people, destroy infrastructure and ecosystems, but also too dirty water will cause diseases, and of course landslides will come along. So as a Minister of Water and Environment, we are looking at SDG 6 holistically, providing safely managed drinking water services, sanitation. We also want to manage wastewater so that we don't pollute our water resources, and also ensure that we provide water of good quality. We also want to make sure that we use water efficiently, something that wasn't actually a big focus previously, that we want to have every drop to count, get more from the water we have. We also want to promote coordination and collaboration through integrated water resources management frameworks, but also, most importantly, this water is shared with other countries. 69% of the water we have in Uganda comes from outside Uganda. So whatever we do, we have to relate with our neighbors, the neighbors with whom we share the Nile. But also we want to look at ecosystems. So in terms of safe water, we are actually right now in urban areas at 72% and in rural areas at 67%. In sanitation, we are at 77 in rural areas and 90% in urban areas, but we want to reach 100%. And of course, when we are looking at integrated water resources management, we are about 62%. The area of integrated water resources management and collaboration with other countries are about 84%. So we are not yet there. We are still doing a lot to ensure that we achieve our targets. So what are we doing as a ministry in terms of safely managed drinking water services? We want to bring water to the people. People have been walking long distances actually to get to a water source. We are now have changed our strategies from point water sources to piped water sources, where we are turning hand-pumped boreholes now into solar-pumped boreholes so that we bring water to the people, meaning that people's time will be saved, and obviously we'll use that time to do other activities. In terms of sanitation, we're also looking at innovative sanitation facilities where we can ensure that we have sanitation facilities that are not causing a problem. We are also, of course, also trying to ensure that we build capacity to all the stakeholders because water touches everybody. We need to get everybody to come on board so that we can work together, the civil society, cultural institutions, religious institutions, private sector, academia, and we are moving forward in establishing partnerships and collaboration. I can leave it at this for now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Maybe I could just ask you a quick question on this. And I guess the last year's UN SDGs report for Uganda highlighted quite a shocking statistic around the number or percentage of people still walking for at least 30 minutes a day. Over 55% of the population is still having to walk 30 minutes a day to access drinking water, and not always good drinking water. Can you tell us how we're going to be addressing this big challenge that still stands before us over the coming 7 years, perhaps?
Yes, indeed, it's a big challenge. We have many Ugandans having to walk many kilometers to access a safe drinking water. And of course, the challenge we're having right now is that cheap water sources actually getting finished. We are having to depend on very expensive water technologies, but our strategy of delivering water through piped systems is going to help us to reduce on the walking distance. We are now focusing on gravity flow schemes. In hill areas where we have large gravity flow schemes, we are delivering water over long kilometers, bringing it as close as possible to the people, and our target is actually to bring it to people's compounds. And that's why I also said that we are now turning hand-pumped boreholes into motorized boreholes, so that one borehole which uses 300 people, the water can be pumped and brought close to the people. But of course, at the heart of that is money. We need money to have all of that delivered. We also need capacity. So the strategies are there, and I think that's where we are calling upon all the different partners to come and work with us so that we can achieve our objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Let's give him a round of applause, please, everybody. I'm going to move on to our next panelist, and it's the representative from the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, Mr. Julius Wamala, Assistant Commissioner. Julius, Uganda has an impressive track record in the use of renewable energy sources, and in fact, expanding electrification across rural areas as well. It's very evident that a lot of work is going on in that area. We, however, do recognize that there is around 94% of the population still rely on firewood for cooking. It's a very normal everyday use that is being dealt with in every household across the country. And we know the negative impact that's having on the environment. In light of those dynamics, tell us a little about some of the progress made in relation to SDG 7 on affordable and clean energy, and maybe highlight one or two strategic initiatives that you're working on to accelerate for the future. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Richard. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Protocol observed. I'm Engineer Julius from Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. I'm representing my permanent secretary, Ms. Irene Batebe. She sent apologies. She's unable to attend the event. Going back to the question regarding SDG 7, where energy lies, as we all know, under SDG 7, the key intervention areas are, one, first of all, is to increase access to cheap, reliable, affordable, and modern energy services. Then also we are looking at efficient utilization of energy. Then we are also looking at ensuring that there is a large penetration of renewable energy in the energy mix. Regarding interventions, yes, you have rightly said over 90% of our population use biomass, and this is affecting the environment. So what government is doing, one is, first of all, we are trying to ensure that we increase access on the grid by constructing transmission lines and distribution lines, plus substations. These will increase last mile connections. Then also, we are bringing interventions like in 2018, we introduced the electricity connections policy. This is all aimed at ensuring free connections for domestic customers. Then also we have developed the National Electrification Strategy to 2022. Our targets are to ensure that we have by 2030 connections of households of about 10.4 million people. Then government also is enrolling the Electricity Access Scale-Up project, which is going to start in July. That is aimed at also increasing access connections to the last mile connections. We're looking at connecting households. We're looking at connecting refugees and their host communities. We're looking at, as you're aware, a lot of biomass destruction is taking place in the refugee host areas, and Uganda is the biggest host for refugees. So we're looking at interventions of trying to connect those areas to electricity under the Scale-Up project. Then also we are looking at efficient mechanisms of cooking, clean cooking stoves. Recently we introduced electric cooking initiatives where we are subsidizing power to enable people move away from charcoal to avoid cutting trees to destroying biomass, to move to electricity. So the number of interventions as a ministry we are looking at, basically we're trying to move away from using biomass to better forms of energy, mainly renewable energy sources. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to move on. We're going to be coming back to the panel, of course, for opportunities to question, but I think an initial statement from each panelist will be a good way to move us forward. I'm going to move to our third panelist, representing the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, Mrs. Dorcas Okalany. You're welcome, madam. We're very, very aware that the role of urban development and how it plays out in bringing more people into the economy. It's very clear that as we urbanize, we bring more people into the cash economy. This was talked a lot about this morning in the financing for development sector. And it's also very welcome that Uganda has created a number of new cities recently. And I think that gives prominence and recognition to growth and investment in those areas. It is also very clear that urban populations, around 40 to 50%, are still living in the informal sector. We're very aware of that fact that most of the young people, and in particular young people, I was struck as I was thinking about the average age of most people in this country. I'm over double the average age of the average Ugandan. Scary. It should be a young person standing up here, not me. But it's very evident that the youth are living in urban populations in some level of poverty, in substandard housing, poor access to public services, and working in the grey economy, you might say, or the informal economy. In light of those dynamics, both the successes and the challenges, tell us something about what the ministry has been doing to progress and some of the successes to date in relation to this area, and some of the challenges and opportunities for acceleration. Thank you. The floor is yours, madam.
Thank you, moderator, honorable ministers, and audience present. Urbanization is on the rise in Uganda. As you're aware, our parliament pronounced cities in Uganda, and there are 15 of them. When you look at these cities, they have claimed the peri-urban areas, which were rural in the past. And we have one city of Kampala, for example, which is highly, highly populated. It is by night it is about 2.3 million, but by day it is 5.3 million. So we have that population. And as the moderator said, most of the youths in these cities are in the informal sector. Now, what have we done as the ministry to house them, to make sure they get jobs, and make sure they earn a decent living and live properly. We have what we call a national urban policy, which we are implementing, and we have implemented it. We implemented it in SDP 1, 2, now we are in 3, and we hope that when we provide some services there, like light rail, like opening up places where people can earn revenue, own source revenue, like building markets, like formalizing them. Now, the registration, URA is helping us in this quest because they have asked 14 numbers of the informal people, but we are saying that we have to give them revenue in order for them to work by creating market areas. Also, we have what we call the National Housing Policy, where we have partnered with the private sector to build houses. But we are also saying, let government also get involved, because housing is for the private sector usually builds houses for people who are average and upper class. But we want to use our own National Housing Corporation to build affordable houses. We are also saying we want government to give us money for land banking, especially in areas around urban settings. You know, after pronouncing the 15 districts, we had 31 municipalities remaining, but we have also increased the number of urban councils, and we want to physically plan these areas. What are we saying physically plan? It is spatial planning, where we have to put roads, where we have to put health centers, so that these urban councils and urban areas can follow the development plan of the country. Recently, Cabinet passed the National Physical Development Policy, and we are very happy about it. We are requesting that all MDAs, the private practitioners, should all implement this physical planning policy so that we put things in the right places, we put amenities in the right places, health centers, schools, so that everybody can enjoy good environment, they can live a healthy life, and we can dispose. We are also planning, like in the 15 cities, a part of them got our garbage collecting trucks. We want to have garbage collected in the urban areas. One of the most important thing is that when you collect garbage, you reduce on people getting diseases like cholera, those diseases which come by filth. So we are saying, apart from collecting the garbage, if government could inject money in our sector, we could be able to recycle this garbage, sort it, sort plastics, protect the environment. We are doing a lot in that area, and we hope what we have done. I gave a whole presentation to the conveners of this. If you can circulate it, you see how much we've done, but we need to go strides. I want to inform the audience that actually urbanization is growing at a rate of 5.2% per annum. While we are talking of these towns, the towns are expanding, and we are saying all the people are moving to the urban area. But out of the urbanized setting, we have 9.8 people under the poverty line. How do we get them out of there? We have to work together. Providing houses is important, but provide affordable houses for our people. And we call upon the private sector. If government is supporting you, you also support us to house our people. This dawned on us during COVID time. During COVID time, we went around, government gave food, but we would go and find a family of 7 living in what we call a mudumo. You would ask them, where do you live? The husband and wife say, we live there, but you can't see a house. We want to provide this in urban area. We have Kasokoso here. And by the way, in Uganda, we have 658 slums coming around the urban areas. So we are saying, Let's work together and let government support us, but we are doing with what would they give us to sensitize the people, to ask them, because we have started now spreading the gospel of the physical plan. And we have planned some cities, Hoima, for example, Hoima cities planned, or the Albertine area, but we want to go further and further so that people know where to cut out their revenue activities, and we get a good life. Because ours is to keep the environment clean, but also house our people properly in the urban areas. And don't forget, in 30 years' time, I think 70% of us will be living in urban areas, because that's the trend. We are seeing it coming. Thank you very much, Moderator.
Thank you so much. And it's interesting what you're saying. And I think one of the issues is very much about, again, coming back to the same question of the cash economy and the formalized economy in urban areas is something we want to see promoted considerably. Building on the discussions of this morning around financing, how do you envisage urban areas growing? It's all very well assuming public services may extend further into the more vulnerable populations, but what is needed is jobs for young people in urban areas. Formalized jobs in more case, not more boda riders, preferably. And I guess, any thoughts on that issue for the future?
Thank you very much, Moderator. You have all heard that we are carrying out a project called USMID in this country. It started with 13 municipalities. Apparently, all those municipalities have become cities. Now we have expanded it to be called UCMID. I don't know how I'll pronounce that one in the future, but we have included cities and municipalities. We have one of our components is for own source revenue. And those people who are living in municipalities know we have built their capacity to collect revenue in their areas. But what we are seeing now as Minister of Urban Development, Sustainable Urban Development, they collect the revenue, but you know the revenue goes to the central coffers. It comes to the consolidated fund. We are saying, please, either find a formula of giving back these people some of the money they collect, so that the people they collect from, that market vendor, sees that the local government there or the urban council is giving a service from his sweat. You know, whenever they ask for service, they say, oh, government has not released the money. But if they were told that 50% remains, they would demand for those services. So we are saying increase urban revenue, but also appropriate to them the revenue commensurate to what the services deliver. Urban areas deliver services which are unique to rural areas. Urban areas have to collect garbage. People have to go to health centers. Actually, most of the people in the rural come to the urban centers for treatment. Most of the hospitals and health centers are in the urban, the referrals, the big hospitals. So we have to provide them enough revenue. And then we'll have a group of health young men and women who will be able to innovate. And we want to encourage our people to innovate. The civil service, public service does not offer enough employment. But if we could skill them, then they will innovate, then they will have revenue. So that's what we are trying to go into. But that will be a multi-sectoral approach, because Minister of Education has to skill these people in order for them to come up and innovate. I was very happy this morning when I saw young girls and boys innovating. The other one who impressed me most was the agricultural, that boy who says he has his own agricultural farm. And I was very impressed. So we should encourage that. Urban farming is also one of these issues where we want to get into. Greening, we want to get into greening. So we have about 5 objectives we want to put across, and we have put them across. In my write-up, you'll see it. We have put them across, and we are saying if we focus on that, then the revenues for the urban centers will grow, but people will have income in their pockets and they will be able to pay taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Let us move on. We're going to give you a rest for a moment and go on to our fourth panelist. So thank you so much. Incidentally, I was impressed with the young man who called himself a farm engineer, because my background is also agricultural engineering, and I thought, yes, at heart I'm also a farm engineer, but I don't practice it so much these days. But that's what we need, people with trades, people with economic opportunities. We're going to move to panelist number 4, Honourable Biyika Songa Lawrence from Ora County and the Chairperson of the Natural Resources Committee. Lawrence, it's very clear that parliamentary oversight is critical for the SDG engagement process. And in particular, thinking about SDGs 6 and 7, water and energy, they must be fairly central to the work of the Natural Resources Committee, I would imagine. Can you share with us some of your experiences of the role of Parliament in accelerating progress in these SDGs in particular, and maybe particularly about the parliamentary committee that you can play, and how that cross-party committee can garner support from multiple sectors and multiple stakeholders? Thank you. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. First of all, I chair the Committee on Climate Change, although I sit on the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. Thank you for this topic. It is true that Parliament plays especially 4 roles of representation, appropriation, legislation, and oversight. And in order to address the challenges we are facing as a country, whether the challenges are identified by government, MDAs, civil society, academia, or private sector, they require legislation, and also they require budget to implement. And for me, my position had been very clear. The first money to address that challenge facing a country like Uganda must come from our budget. And it can never happen without the input of Parliament. That has a responsibility of appropriation. Therefore, on the issue of water and energy, yes, our priority as a country, as you may know, energy is very key. If we are talking about creating jobs or addressing the challenges like climate change, deforestation, and so on, energy is key. If we want to do value addition, if we want to go do industrialization, we are talking about agro-industrialization. That means we have to double production in agriculture, at the same time run the industries. We cannot do that without energy, and we can also not do that if we don't double that production in agriculture. And one way of doubling production in agriculture is to have water for production. That's the linkages between all these SDGs. Therefore, our priorities cannot be addressed unless we make energy access that should be affordable, strong, it must be industrial power, and also reliable. There are places that have hydroelectricity power, like a region like West Nile, but it is not reliable, and they don't have reliable electricity. And you cannot now talk about industries there. Number 2, most of the energy sector we are developing, although when we signed the Paris Agreement and also ratified it, Uganda promised that we are going to prioritize adaptation, and we are talking about renewable energy, hydropower, solar, geothermal, and others. But our priority now is to develop the hydropower. But this hydropower relies heavily on the presence of water. And water, we cannot have water in the rivers unless we have protected our watershed. So there is high deforestation for charcoal and firewood in the areas where we have dams. So what is the implication along that line? That's where our oversight role comes, and we keep making our advisory, playing our advisory role, that we must protect our watershed. If we need water to run our big investment like hydropower, because in future the water will dry out. So along that line, our mandate is very key, and we have to work together. And we cannot work together only with government. We have to involve civil society, academia, and private sector. That will promote coordination, that will promote efficiency of utilization of resources, but also prevent duplication. This is very important, and I'm happy the Prime Minister is here, the Deputy Prime Minister is here. The policy committee, for example, on environment is chaired by the Prime Minister. So we want to promote these synergies so that all these MDAs can work together to ensure that we achieve our priority. But of course, we can address energy, we can address issues of water, but there will still be other related challenges, like climate change. If we don't address climate change, the impact are great, can affect our infrastructure. Just imagine if our dam in Jinja or in Bujagali is washed away by the water, what happens to the economy? So these are things that need to be talked about together so that we can address our challenges. But of course, all this will require climate or will require finance. For us as a committee, you are aware, we wanted a climate change fund that would help to address some of these related issues. It was not possible to put it in the law, but we still managed to provide for a certificate where we say there must be substantial amount of money in all the budgets of the MDAs showing that we are going to address climate change related issues. But unfortunately, this was the first time we tested what we have put in the law, and only 3 parameters were analyzed out of about 15 in the BFPs. So we are saying next year we should prioritize this so that we can have adequate finance to address issues of energy, water, and also climate change. But there is also the aspect of transport. The speaker before me talked about the issues to do with cities and urban centers. We are trying to see how we can have resilient infrastructure that can withstand the impact of climate change. Now, we are talking about roads, we are talking about housing, we are talking about electricity, infrastructure, and so on. So we need resilient infrastructure. But this infrastructure must also be low carbon. Otherwise, we may gain here but lose it all, because we may think we are gaining. For example, you may think you are gaining by importing petroleum product from outside. Just by transporting it from Mombasa by road to here, you have already caused emission that can water down your effort here. That's why we want to develop it here and make it low carbon. So these are related things. And then the issue of water still. Our water is now polluted. There is too much pollution of our water, and it's making the cost of treatment of this water very high, and the cost is transferred on the consumers here. So what happens to individual household income if you are overspending on water and you are overspending on energy? So these are related issues. If you want to promote tourism in Uganda, then you must address pollution in cities. Kampala is one of the most polluted cities in the world. Now, many tourists would prefer to check the air quality before coming to Uganda, although major parts of Uganda is still safe, but we need to address these related issues. That's why we are talking about smart, clean, green, and resilient economy. So our position as Parliament is to ensure that in our oversight role, we make adequate budget, and that first money should come from our budget. And then other people, other donors can supplement that budget. And that must be done in a dialogue so that all the MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies can come together to see that our priorities ABC. Of course, we don't have enough money in our budget. So this money must be generated locally. So for us, in order to generate money locally, we are saying we should put our little money for income generation, not again for consumption. If you know that a road is going to generate money to our budget, then we should work on that road rather than putting it for consumptive activities. If you look at our debt, public debt now, it is about 80.8%. 80.8 trillion, of which 47 is foreign, and then about 33 is domestic. I think Honorable Golobisier can verify. I'm talking about the public debt. Now, for us as a committee, looking at issues like that, we are saying, why don't we also explore option of debt swap? Since we are a rich country with a lot of natural resources, we are absorbing a lot of greenhouse gas emission because we have a carbon sink, a rich carbon sink here. Why don't we remove the 33 at least? I mean the 47. Why can't we negotiate for a carbon, kind of a carbon credit where we can cancel our debt, especially the foreign debts? Of course, it is difficult for the local borrower, for the local people who lend it to us, who lend to us, to say we are going to do a debt swap locally. But internationally, we can try to explore all opportunities that can help us to develop our economy, to have a resilient economy, and to have a resilient country. I think that is our position. But we must work together, government, civil society, academia, and private sector. Thank you very much.
Honourable, thank you so much. I appreciate your deliberations and thoughts around that important issue. And we all know, of course, the impact of climate change has had the effect of pushing back progress on a range of SDGs. And I'd be interested to know if you've got one recommendation for how we accelerate progress in the future to mitigate the impacts of climate change on food production, access to water, for example, and a way of actually bringing about some significant change in relation to, let's say, SDG 6 and 7. What would the Committee on Climate Change be recommending for a way to accelerate? Just one point, please, if you will.
Thank you very much. First of all, we have to, on the energy issue, we have to stop paying for dim energy. Dim energy means we have built a power station, but we are not evacuating it to the people, but we are paying for what is generated. First of all, that kind of agreement is totally not acceptable. Why do we, even if I generate and I don't give to the people, we shall still pay? So let us put our priority to evacuate this power to reach the people. The more people connected, they will be able to do their own businesses, like value addition and so on, while we struggle to see that this electricity going to them must be reliable and it must be strong for industrial development. I think that will help us a lot if we can connect all the places. They will create their own jobs if they have power. But number two, maybe they will have problem with now transport system. Let us make I'm happy in this budget we have put 1 billion shillings per district for district roads. If we can improve mobility, then they will have access to market. A businessman from Kampala will go all the way to Zombo without fear of getting stuck on the road. So transport and energy along that line will help a lot to address the challenge.
Honourable, thank you so much for your thoughts on that subject. We're going to move to our fifth panelist now. And this is Ambassador Eli Kamuhangire from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Ambassador, it's very clear that multilateral relations are very critical to the achievement of SDGs, and how Uganda can strengthen and engage through diplomatic means, concerted efforts of both government and multi-sector stakeholders as well. Of course, some solutions to the SDGs require cross-border, continental solutions, as we were hearing this morning as well. Of course, a case in point would be the issue of the impact of climate change on all the SDGs and the achievement of them in this country. Perhaps you could tell us something about how multilateralism is critical, how it has helped or how it's helped progress some of the SDGs so far to the midpoint of where we are at the moment in 2023, and some of the critical areas we need to invest in for the future in terms of SDG diplomacy with other countries and with other stakeholders. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rumsey, our moderator today, honorable ministers present, members of parliament, and all protocol observed. Now, I just wanted to say one thing on multilateralism, that in the same year that Uganda got her independence, 1962, is when it was admitted as a member of the United Nations. And since then, Uganda has worked hard within the United Nations to ensure that they actually reform the UN to ensure that it works for the people of Uganda. Now, I also should point out from the outset that when the Agenda 2030 was originally inaugurated and eventually adopted, it was presided over by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Uganda as the president in September 2015 in New York. So that shows you again that the government of Uganda has got a lot of belief in this multilateralism and believing that this multilateralism can deliver. Now, it is also not surprising that Uganda government, if you look at the development plans of Uganda, they have been based on incorporating the whole of the SDGs. And that's again another show of commitment that the government of Uganda is aiming at ensuring that they implement. Two, I want also to say that when you look at SDG 17 in particular, the purpose is to strengthen the means of implementing and also to ensure there is there's investment in global partnership and cooperation to be able to achieve whatever is to be achieved. And I think in particular this time around, these SDGs were aiming at not only government, but bringing on board business and the private sector and the civil society. And that global partnership at that level, we believe that it's one of the best that really happened to ensure that these SDGs deliver for the world. Now, if we look at the SDG 17 again, we see it is calling for revitalization of the global system to ensure that there is complete delivery. Now, the country Uganda believes in one thing, that it is trade. And Honorable Gorevi is, I think that's why Honorable Gorevi and the team were ensuring that trade is a core in this, because we believe that international trade can be able to deliver the resources that are required. And that's why Uganda has been a major participant at the WTO, which is the only global, the only organization at the international level that looks at a fair and equitable trade system in the whole world. And we believe that whatever is negotiated at the WTO ensures there is a sustainability and equitability. So Uganda has effectively participated at that level to ensure that this issue is achieved. Even within the EU, Uganda has participated in Brussels to ensure that the discussions also work along that. Today, I think the Uganda joining with the other African groups, they have ensured that they are negotiating with the EU on the viable alternative system that will replace the everything but arms, because under the everything but arms, they were free riders. But under the new system, we will no longer be the free riders. But I wish to point out one thing here, that there have been challenges, and these challenges are very critical. And Mr. Moderator, it is often said that the battle for the SDGs will be won in the LDCs, or they will be lost within the LDCs. Why? They are saying that nobody should be left behind. So of course, Uganda as an LDC, at the end of the day, we are going to find out, because like all the speakers here were saying, we are halfway. In fact, we are left with just 7 years to the end of the evaluation period. So the question is, within these 7 years, will we win the battle, or are we going to lose the battle? But the hope is that we can be able to win this battle. Now, if we look at the challenges, again, like I'm saying, Uganda has effectively participated, but it has been stated here that Uganda as a country today, we have, in terms of trade, because we are believing that international trade is the only one that can deliver, but we have a deficit of 4.2 billion US dollars. And this is very critical for Uganda, and it calls for re-evaluation. That's why Uganda as a country has decided to re-evaluate herself and see how do we address this issue. In addressing this issue, Uganda has decided to ensure that we adopt a robust economic and commercial diplomacy that addresses the issues that have affected our trade balance. The financing for the SDG has proved to be a major stumbling block because implementation of all the SDGs will require alternative financing. And I want to point out that at the international level, it has been underscored that the existing Bretton Woods institutions have failed to deliver on what was supposed to be delivered. And we are negotiating at the international level, trying to build international consensus for the reform in the international financial architecture set up 80 years ago. Certainly 80 years ago when the Bretton Woods institutions were set up, the architecture was different. And so we are saying that things have changed and it's important that there is a reform. And Mr. Moderator was glad that just yesterday, the French president agreed when he was meeting the president of Kenya that it's true that the architecture needs to be improved on. And because the rest of the world was requesting for a new system, but now we are glad that the developed countries are saying we can have a reform of the existing systems. Now, so countries like Uganda have been trying to have other options to utilize to be able to achieve these sustainable development goals. And one of them has been ensuring that we have a South-South cooperation. And this South-South cooperation has delivered because it has delivered in terms of capacity building, knowledge sharing, and other areas, which has helped us to improve even our agricultural sector and other areas. Now, one of the other things that we need to point out, FAO has come in handy as an international organization partnering with Uganda to ensure that we work on some of the triangular cooperation that has been implemented since 2012. And we are seeing some achievements because, for example, we are seeing that in agro-processing, we had 10,000 beneficiaries in the first and second phase. This was aimed at improving agricultural productivity and also transferring skills and sustainable technologies. Now, but we are realizing that, of course, this can't, we have to be able to involve everybody. And Mr. Moderator, I want to point out that given the value of the South-South cooperation, it is on this basis that Uganda government decided to say that Uganda will host the NAM and also G77 in January 2024. And the purpose, you have seen the themes is deepening cooperation for shared global affluence, that is for NAM, and for the G77 is leaving no one behind, which is the real theme that the SDGs were aiming at. So we are hoping that these summits will provide an opportune moment to build again synergies among the countries so that we can build partnerships that are required to address the challenges that we have met in achieving these sustainable development goals, because like we are saying, we are only left with 7 years. And the question is, what can be achieved? But we believe that all the countries of the world working together, these SDGs can be achieved. And at the end of the day, I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel if there's cooperation, if there's partnership, because that's what SDG 17 calls for global partnerships, both at the regional, at the continental level. And for us at the continental level, we now have the African Intercontinental Free Trade Area, which is supposed to provide free movement of goods and services for all the African countries. And we believe this should be able to create a formidable, a critical mass that will be required to make Africa an investment region, which is going to be, I think, it should be able to help Africa to accelerate the industrialization process. Because if we can accelerate the industrialization process, I think this will be the way forward. And particularly with a country like Uganda now operating a parish development model, it is going to help us to increase our agricultural productivity, which we'll be able to send to export to all of the African continent. All of you are aware that Africa continent is a net food importing continent. It's quite interesting. And Uganda can be a food basket for the whole of the African continent. And this again, what we were saying, could create export promotion, at the same time, import substitution for the whole of African continent. And we believe that once the industrialization process for Africa is achieved, then the sustainable development goals will also be achieved. And precisely like I said, as for Uganda, the foreign policy of Uganda is anchored on 3 pillars. One, the well-being of the people of Uganda, the prosperity of the people of Uganda, and peace and secure Uganda. And that's why Uganda, you see, has been participating particularly in the peace-building efforts. Because I want also to point out today that these sustainable development goals cannot be achieved alone, because there's a nexus between peace and security and development. You cannot achieve sustainable development without sustainable peace and security. And again, this explains to you why Uganda's model, Uganda's paradigm of having African solutions for African solutions, so that you have regional peace-led processes that help the continent to ensure that there's peace and security, where production can be able to take place. And we believe if that occurs, then you have the sustainable development goals being achieved. I thank you.
Ambassador, thank you so much, and let's appreciate the Ambassador. Thank you. You've said a couple of interesting things throughout this. I would be interested to hear that one takeaway that you may want to see promoted at the high-level political forum on SDGs. That would be the thing that would address that seismic change that's needed. That the keynote speaker this morning highlighted the fact that business as usual is not going to address the need for accelerated growth to 2030. I think we're all very aware of that. Many of the solutions that I've heard today sound like business as usual. Is there one key thing that you think, if we could do that, that would catapult us to a next level? Just 1 point, please.
I think just 1 point that I pointed out, the Bretton Woods institutions have not helped us to be able to deliver on this, because even when it comes to climate change, the developed countries had promised, for example, in the Paris, under the Paris point, they had promised 100 billion to the developing countries for adaptation. Up to now, we are not seeing that money. And every time when the new COPs are coming up, more pledges are made. But there has been no issue of implementing what was agreed. And so the Bretton Woods institutions also need to reform their system so that they ensure that they address the challenges that have arisen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think we will give a round of applause for the whole panel, please, and just say thank you for all the inputs.